Welcome back to the Spiritually Wired podcast. I have with me today Janet Coe. Janet is the president and co-founder of the Menopause Foundation of Canada, which is a national nonprofit dedicated to raising awareness of menopause and its impact on women and society. She is a passionate advocate for women's health. She is committed to closing the menopause knowledge gap, improving access to care and treatment, and creating menopause inclusive workplaces. Janet is on a mission to redefine menopause, shifting the narrative from stigma to renewal, strength, and wisdom. Like many women, she was unprepared for menopause and knows firsthand how unmanaged symptoms can hold women back. Determined to drive change and help to launch landmark menopause research and advocacy campaigns that ignited a national conversation and spurred meaningful action. Janet has held senior executive roles in communications across diverse health-related sectors, bringing a depth of expertise to her advocacy. She is a compelling speaker and champion for change. She was recognized as one of the top 25 women of influence in 2023 for her impact and leadership. Welcome to the podcast, Janet. Hi, I'm Renee Walker, a mindset mentor, speaker, and lover of all things spiritual. I believe that at our core, we are all spiritually wired for love, peace, success, and abundance. Here on the podcast, we're diving into mindset, wellness, and business, but always through a spiritual lens. Let's just say we're going deep, but we're keeping it light. So let's elevate your life from the inside out, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Spiritually Wired. Welcome to the podcast, Janet. I am so looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Renee.
Yeah, so it is a conversation that is needed, that I think is, for so many women right now. I mean, the good thing is that the conversation around menopause, perimenopause is more, we're hearing about it more, but at the same time, there's also just so much information and it is feeling a little bit overwhelming for women right now in that space. So I'm looking forward to being able to open up this dialogue in this community here. And so I'm just super grateful that you're here, Janet, so that we can talk more about it. And I'd love to start with so you are the co-founder of the Menopause Foundation of Canada. And so obviously with that means that there was a powerful story. Something led you to want to be a change maker, to create impact in that way. So what's been your personal journey?
Like so many advocates, it does start with this story. You're
Right.
quite right. And for me, this goes back almost 20 years. So, going back 20 years, entering perimenopause in a time where we never talked about that. In fact, I had never heard of the word perimenopause. So I like to say that I was blindsided by menopause, had never heard of the word. At the height of my professional career, I started to have all kinds of issues that I had no idea were connected to the menopause transition. So body aches, brain fog, fatigue, night sweats. I had heart palpitations that scared me so much I ended up in a merge. I thought I was having a heart attack. I would go to bed
Mhm.
every night with a bottle of baby aspirin beside, on my night table because I had heard that if I was having a heart attack, that might save me. Um, and everybody said I was a healthy person. I ended up actually walking away from a senior vice president role at the age of 48, thinking I was burnt out. But looking through the rearview mirror, after a long and winding path to finding health and wellness, I realized I was just going through perimenopause. Had I known, had I understood, had I received some help and for me some treatment, my career trajectory would be very different. So, my own personal journey is one of recognizing that menopause is a health equality issue in our country and that it has significant ramifications, not just for a woman's health, but for her financial viability, for the economy, and for society overall. And, I love that you're doing this podcast because women listen and women talk. And it was through conversation with a colleague and a friend who was going through a very hard menopause journey.
Mhm.
We realized that we needed to take action and we needed to raise awareness and make a difference and to drive change. So that's why we created the Menopause Foundation of Canada in 2022 as the country's first national nonprofit menopause advocacy organization.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for standing up and for being the voice for so many women. And as you said, a big part of it is that we don't understand what's happening, and there seems to be a disconnect with the information that we are receiving. Maybe, and again, we're not here to blame anyone or cause, but there seems to be a disconnect with the information that we're receiving in our doctor's office, with the what we're also kind of from a societal perspective, the information that we've been receiving. And so where are you finding is the space where you can start to like bridge that gap between the knowledge lacking and then bringing that awareness, the knowledge to the women?
hmm Well, I love how you said, Renee, that, we're not here to blame anybody because
Yeah.
I really like approaching this conversation from we've never just historically considered women in midlife. And now that we have more information and things are changing, it's just a tremendous opportunity. It's an exciting opportunity on so many fronts to really
Mhm.
look at this with a fresh perspective and to make change. So, one of our goals as an organization is to close the menopause knowledge gap. And we're
Mhm.
guided by a medical advisory board of the country's top OB/GYN menopause specialists who have dedicated their lives to making this happen. One of the first things that we really want women to know and to understand is that menopause is a profound hormonal transition for us. It's a health transition. When we start to see menopause not just as a natural stage of life, but as a health transition, we prepare for it. We think about it differently. So many of
Mhm.
us have been misled to think that, menopause was just about period changes, the end of our childbearing years, and, maybe we would have a pesky hot flash or two, but then it would be
Right.
done. And what we now know is that, women will spend up to half of their lives in a stage of menopause, perimenopause, which is, that period of often hormonal chaos before reaching our last and final period. That can last anywhere from 2 to 10 years. And then you're in
Mhm.
menopause for the rest of your life. And these symptoms that we often trivialize or that we think are short lived, for many women, those can last up to a decade or more. So we need to
Mhm.
really pay attention and understand that it's a whole body experience. And it's actually happening in our brains too. Our brains are being rewired during menopause. So it's very exciting to learn about this. And I think for women to maybe for the first time in their lives, to truly start to prioritize their own health, their own well being, and to really prepare for what is, I think, the most exciting stage of life.
Yeah, I think that that's been the best part about the conversation lately is this reframe around it and truly seeing it as like something positive that's happening, that it's not, prior it was just we see it as this all of the difficult challenges that it brings to our health, the transition period, while as now we're starting to see it and own it as actually a stage in our life that gets to be something beautiful in its own way. And there's so much power to that when as women we own this part of our life, and I'm kind of really excited about that part of it. I think there's something we had I had a guest a teacher in the spiritually wired membership come, and she was teaching us Kellyanne Appleton is her name, about the archetypes of women. And so there's the maiden, the mother, the queen, and the crone, and kind of how the different stages of our life, it's more there's the physical aspects, yes, of menopause, but wouldn't you say too that with that comes also the emotional changes that happen when we're transitioning in this place. Like the brain fog, that can really have an emotional toll on your day to day life as well. So it's kind of like looking at it as a whole as well.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most exciting part of where the conversation is headed.
Mhm.
This reframing, as
Right.
you say, of menopause, and really seeing it um, as the most exciting stage of life. We should celebrate being here. Women, when they reach menopause, they are at their strongest, wisest. They know themselves. They can assess situations very effectively. It's a very powerful stage of life. And
Yes.
it's time for women to really step in and to own that and to believe it. And we have a lot of ageism that we need to
Hmm.
confront.
Hmm.
I think one of the reasons why menopause was shrouded in secrecy for so long is because the image of the woman in menopause was universally unflattering. No one wanted to be associated with this sense of a woman in decline. And I think that's just something that society has done to keep women small, because this, in fact, is the complete opposite of that. You are in your prime. You are. You have the most to contribute to your family, to your community, to the workplace. Women at this stage of life start businesses, create new ventures. They are more powerful, creative, and influential than they've ever been. But I'll give you an example of, because some people say, well, that's not really true. And there was a governor of the Bank of England, going back maybe 2018. He said that the economy was entering a menopausal era. And he was asked, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, it's past its peak. It's no longer so potent. Um, you may recall there was an anchor on CNN who there was a presidential candidate running for the nomination of her party, Nikki Haley. She was 51. And, this anchor said, well, you're past your prime. And he was asked to
Hmm.
describe, well, what is a woman in her prime? Well, that's a woman in her 20s and 30s. So there is this perception in our society about as women get older, they lose value. And that is a cultural shift that I think women need to drive and to lead, because it's
Hmm.
just not the reality. Survey after survey shows that women in menopause feel better, stronger, they're more open. There's a whole movement around I don't give an F anymore once you
Yeah.
reach menopause, because
Yeah.
you really come into your own strength, your own power. And, there's an anthropologist, Margaret Mead, who she had this great line where she said, there's no more powerful force in the world than a menopausal woman with zest. And
Mm.
I believe that's true, but you can't get there. And this is the importance of the work of the foundation. If you are struggling with these unmanaged symptoms of menopause, if you are not able to connect the dots on issues that you may be having, and if you are fearful of taking action to address some of those issues. So, there is a balance to that, right? If
Mhm.
women do need to and deserve to feel healthy, and they deserve to have healthcare providers that understand menopause and can provide high quality, evidence based, comprehensive menopause care, treatment, and support. And that doesn't exist today. We've got millions of women in Canada who are denied access to menopause care and treatment, not because they are not looking for it, but because we have, for many, many reasons, a system that isn't set up to offer that support to women who really need it.
Mhm.
And Renee, there are 1/4 of the population are female over the age of 40. We are
Yeah.
10 million women strong. And
Wow.
our demographic has just largely been overlooked in so many
Mhm.
areas of life.
Mm. Oh, there's so many things there that you just said. That I mean, partly, yes, the idea of there is, and I know I'm starting to feel it even more now, is just the power of being this age and at this stage of my life in feeling stronger in who I am, and not, there's a part of our life as women where we're so like, we're designed in some ways, I guess, right, to be nurturing. And so we're giving, giving, giving to everyone else. And there's something about this time of our life where we're feeling that energy come back to us in a new way, where we're not giving in the same way. We're now recognizing that all that energy we've been giving to other people, we also get to receive that. And that is so incredibly powerful. Yet at the same time, what you're saying and reminding us is that we can get there when we're in a place of we are feeling maybe more balanced in our physical bodies, that it can be hard to feel that if you are experiencing all of the symptoms, which again, that's the interesting thing, is every woman is different. You'll talk to every woman. We all have our own, we've experienced different symptoms. We've had different journeys. So certainly where I am today is because I have had access to be able to receive care that I've had to pay for outside of what has been provided here. So, what would you say for women right now who are maybe in the thick of experiencing all the symptoms? They're not quite able to receive the help that they need directly from their doctor. Are there any resources? Is there anywhere? I mean, I know the foundation is.
Sure. I would start by just saying, you are not alone in feeling maybe
Hmm.
lost and confused. And we're living in a moment where, they call it the menopause gold rush, menopause Inc., where you know, we've been this market of women that has been untapped. It's like a $25 billion market where all of a sudden you've got all kinds of people trying to sell us everything under the sun to manage our menopause. And there is no right way to manage your menopause. It is a unique journey. And what might work for me may not work for you. My symptoms will be different than your symptoms. One quarter of women say they experience very few symptoms at all. So
Right.
I would just encourage people to not give up, to advocate for yourself, to look for evidence based sources of information. If you go to menopausefoundationcanada.ca, we link to all of the credible evidence based information sources that you will need. We've got a free downloadable symptom tracker that women can use to track their symptoms and have a better conversation with their healthcare provider. That symptom tracker, these are the verified symptoms of menopause developed with our medical advisory board. Many women know about some of those physical symptoms like the hot flashes and the night sweats and the period changes, but there's mood and mental health, there's genitourinary and sexual health, there's sleep and cognition. So there are 30 plus symptoms that we may experience because we have these estrogen receptors all over our bodies. There's
Mhm.
also tools on our website to allow you to prepare for that conversation with your healthcare provider. And if for some reason you are not able to get the support that you need, we also have a section where you can try to find other providers. And we now created a new tool because, Renee, as you said, you've had to, pay out of pocket for
Mhm.
menopause care. So we've created a tool with our medical advisory board to help you assess the many new virtual and private care providers that are out there. And we're advocating for ensuring that every woman across the country has free access through our healthcare system to menopause care. This is just unacceptable. Not every woman will get pregnant, but every woman will experience menopause if she lives long enough, and she should not
Mhm.
have to pay out of pocket for basic menopause care.
Wow. I mean, this work is so incredibly important, and so much of what you do as well is to educate not just the women but also in the workplace. So what's been your and I know that you've had experience, as you mentioned, for yourself, what the experience was like as a senior executive, and feeling that the workplace wasn't adapting or wasn't supportive of where you were. So what is the work that you do with the different workplaces to support women?
Well, one of the things that we did when we started the foundation, we recognized that it wouldn't be enough to legitimize this issue if we just talked about women's stories. We needed to have data to drive the conversation forward. So we actually worked with Deloitte and had a report sponsored by Sun Life where we quantified for the first time the economic impact of these unmanaged symptoms of menopause at $3.5 billion annually. This is due to lost productivity, missed days of work, and women themselves in their peak earning years losing money because they are either taking a lesser role, reducing their hours, or stepping away from the workforce altogether. So, one of the
Mhm.
most exciting things that has happened on the menopause landscape front is that the workforce and the workplace has really recognized that they need to support people at all stages of life, that they've just never considered women in midlife. And with this new information to demonstrate to them that, you know, 1/4 of their workforce are likely female over the age of 40, and the fastest growing cohort of working women in Canada are between the ages of 45 and 55 when most women reach menopause. And that menopause intersects with that critical career stage where women are taking on more leadership roles, or they're just so critically important to an organization because of their experience, the depth of their expertise. So the workplace has really stepped up. We launched a campaign called Menopause Works Here. We created a menopause inclusive workplace playbook that organizations can follow. It's free to join, free to download the playbook. We've had more than 250 companies sign up. Organizations like IKEA, L'Oreal Canada, BMO, PwC, Sun Life, RBC. It's just had such momentum because
Mhm.
organizations have just said, we cannot afford to lose women in the prime of their working lives. And it's not a heavy lift to make a big difference, to hold education sessions, to look at your benefits plans, to look at reasonable accommodation. And Renee, I can tell you one of the most exciting things is that this energy in the workplace, it's now on the agenda of HR leaders. We had a large fish plant out on the East Coast do a workplace session for their employees. We've had male dominated, like the oil industry, talking about this. So, a construction company. So, this conversation is spreading, and it is so touching to see leaders and organizations start to share their own stories, to see men really stepping up and getting curious about menopause and being very open hearted to recognize that, oh my goodness, I had no idea that there could be so
Mhm.
many things that a colleague or a partner or a spouse could be experiencing. So it's really taken off on the workplace front, and they've been leading the way because the bottom line is negatively impacted when women don't show up to work every day and contribute 100%.
Absolutely. And then also the women that they are potentially losing who feel that they're not capable of maybe doing the work they were doing in the same way because of the misunderstanding of it, right? We were having a conversation with some of the women in my community, and that's what some of them were just bringing up, how challenging it was to, or how confusing it was for them when they were experiencing, let's say, brain fog, um, confusing that with imposter syndrome and starting to feel more self conscious about the fact that, okay, this is all information that I know. I used to be able to deliver and to do this work so easily, and now it's feeling more challenging. And so, because maybe the information wasn't there in the same way, the knowledge wasn't there in the same way, took it upon themselves to feel as if it was something that they were doing wrong, and how liberating it can be to have access to this knowledge, to know that it's not you, that it's something that your body is going through, and that there's ways that you can support yourself or help. That is so big. And to know as well that you can ask for help or to speak to whoever it is at your work environment, that you can, but to do it without the shame that goes with, blaming yourself for something that might be. just a part of what is happening in your health. I think that it's such an important and liberating conversation that we can open up for women.
Oh, there's so much, to what you just said, but the big thing is we are breaking the taboo of menopause at work.
Yes, that's
Which
it.
I
Taboo.
you're breaking the taboo and the stigma when you open up that conversation and allowing women to be seen and heard maybe for the very first time. The workplace is playing a very important role to close the menopause knowledge gap. I've done workplace education sessions where I've had women come up to me in tears afterwards, some saying, I actually was feeling like I was going to quit my job, but I can see now that I'm going through this perimenopause stage and all of these symptoms that you talked about, I'm having. I'm now going to go to my doctor and I'm going to try to get some help for this. Um, and another thing you said, which is very true, women tend to be very hard on themselves. So there's some research that shows women's perceived sense of their contribution to the workplace is lesser going through menopause than it actually is. So, all of that to say is we are tougher on ourselves
Yeah.
and on our performance. And it's not surprising because when you look at some of those mood and mental health symptoms, so many women report, just not feeling like themselves, or they have low mood, or they may have new onset of anxiety that they never had before. Brain fog can be real for many people. I know for myself it was, where
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm struggling to find words, like it's my mouth and my brain are not connecting the way they used to be. And
Mhm.
this can be very, very frustrating. And depending on the degree of severity of that for somebody, many women can get very frightened, like, what is wrong with me? Am I developing dementia? So
Yes.
when you just understand that, oh, these are typical symptoms. Um, I'm not going crazy. I'm not losing my mind. Oh, there's many things I can do to help myself. So there's, lifestyle changes you can make. There's preventative care things that you can do. And there's really never been a better time to experience menopause because there are so many different treatment options available. Cognitive behavioral therapy, a whole host of, different things that you can do, menopause hormone therapy, non-hormonal treatments. So it is this opportunity for us to maybe for the first time in our lives take stock of where we're at, prioritize our health and our well-being, and also recognize that it's a whole body experience, and our brains, this is one of the most fascinating things, with the new research. There's knowledge and recognition that our brains are being rewired during menopause.
Mhm.
So, it's like we're down regulating the parts of our brains that we don't need to use as much, and I think that's why we become even greater leaders, why we become even more powerful at this stage of life, because there is this new emergent energy that we have and a new clarity that we have about who we are, what we contribute, and where we can go. And I think if we can lean into, yes, you're going to have a whole bunch of potentially symptoms. And if we understood that early enough, if we knew we would lose a significant amount of bone density in perimenopause and menopause, and that 1 in 3 women will develop an osteoporotic, you know, fracture in their lifetime, we would prioritize weight bearing exercises and try to build as much muscle as we could early on so that we can be
Mhm.
strong when we reach this stage of life. That's the preventative care, that's the knowledge is power component of it. Um, so we want to close the knowledge gap, take action to allow us to really live our best life at this stage of life and see it as a new chapter, an exciting new chapter that we can plan and prepare for and really celebrate stepping into the women we were always meant to become. I love you used a word earlier on about it being very, I think you said it was liberating. And
Mhm.
I 100% agree. It is very liberating.
There's the shift again and like the level of tolerance. If we're just speaking real right now, it's like the level of tolerance that we have goes down, which can maybe make the people around us a little uncomfortable. But that's the part that when we can really step into, the way I see it is that we are in a space where we get to really break, like, to receive what we want to receive, to be with the people that we want to be in. Like, there's a certain level, as you said, the new clarity. There's a clarity that comes with, like, what am I willing to tolerate? And it's okay to not tolerate the things that no longer serve, that are just not for you at this time anymore.
I think that's an emerging part of the conversation that I'm very excited
Yes.
about because I feel that there was almost, well, women are experiencing rage. And so let's blame
Yeah.
their menopause for the rage, and they have to get that under control. And, this is a complex area. There may be some truth to that, that you could have such wide ranging hormonal fluctuations that it is leading to certain symptoms or behaviors that you don't like. But the other side of that is don't try to suppress or ignore the rage. Get curious about it. What is
Yeah.
that that you may have been tolerating in your life that you are now feeling or experiencing in a different way? And try to observe it and then assess it. So I think these emotions that we're going to feel as we experience menopause. And by the way, if anybody's thinking, well, if I take hormone therapy, I'm not going to experience menopause. No, you really are. The hormone therapy may, minimize like your hot flashes and your night sweats and some of these symptoms that can be, very problematic to thrive and to live your best life. But you will still experience this mind and this body transformation that you're going to go through.
Mhm.
So get curious about that. The conversation lacks nuance, Renee, like even like there's this topic about, well, menopause is causing divorce.
Mhm.
Um, no, women have been going through menopause forever.
Yeah.
And we're just at, we've never been here before. We've never had so many women in midlife with the financial ability to support themselves. And because of that, women may be making choices and decisions that they wouldn't have been able to make prior, 20, maybe 50 years ago, 70 years ago. At the same time, if you are having symptoms that are having a negative impact on your mood, your sexual function, on so many different things that can impact a relationship. Our own research shows that 4 in 10 women say that their symptoms have had a negative impact on their relationship. You want to recognize that too and
Mhm.
to, work on that and figure it out. But everything is black and white in this space,
Yeah.
and as we know, there's a lot of nuance and two things can be true at the same time.
So important, such an important conversation. And the curiosity is so big. And yes, it's going to it might amplify the areas of your life where the cracks may have likely were already there, right? It's just if your level of tolerance is not quite the same, it can manifest in different ways. Um, Janet, are you able to speak to HRT? And I know that you're not coming at it from a medical background, but there's so much confusion as to, what should I be taking? When should I be taking it?
Hmm. Yeah, I think this is I can't think of another medication that has been so vilified so unfairly and where
Mhm.
there's so much focus and attention on the risk associated with it. On our website, and I really encourage people to go, and we do have all of the links to the appropriate resources that you want, from
Okay.
the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada, the Canadian Menopause Society, the International Menopause Society, the North American Menopause Society, which is now called the Menopause Society. They've got statements that they put out on non hormonal treatments, hormonal treatments. There's a pocket guide that translates the critical practice guidelines into more simple language for healthcare practitioners. And I encourage women to look at that. Sadly, this is one area of medicine where we need to educate ourselves a little more than other areas because our healthcare providers, through no fault of their own, they have
Mhm.
not received the education and the training to actually offer this kind of care. And the other thing that I've learned, which I think is important to say, our healthcare providers who are already stretched do not even get appropriately compensated to have these conversations with women. So there's a lot of systemic reasons why we're not getting the care. But when it
Mhm.
comes to menopause hormone therapy, there's global consensus that the benefits outweigh the risks if you're a woman within 10 years of your menopause or before the age of 60. And it's used to treat hot flashes and night sweats. It's the gold standard. Um, it can prevent bone loss. I think this is something that many women don't know. It's got an FDA approval for that. It prevents bone loss. It's used to treat the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, and that's localized vaginal estrogen that's not systemic. So that could be vaginal dryness, burning, itching, pain with sex. You don't have to be interested in sex anymore. All of those things can have a pretty negative impact on your life, your ability to play sports, to just go for a walk and have fun. Um,
Yeah.
and then if you enter early menopause, the guidelines are very clear that if you are in early menopause or premature menopause, early before the age of 45, premature before the age of 40, the guidelines say unless there's a reason for you not to be on hormone therapy, you should be on hormone therapy because it's very protective of your bones, your heart, your brain. So I just think women should approach all of this without fear. And then all of that also, it's not a magic pill. The
Mhm.
foundation of good health are all the things that we are doing all the time, but really hard to do, moving our bodies, eating well. That's the foundation of good health. And we need to really focus on that for sure. There's also many, many non-hormonal treatment options for women. Some new ones that really target the center of the brain where a hot flash originates. There's cognitive behavioral therapy that can be very helpful and is actually the standard protocol for somebody who's really struggling with sleep. So there's many things that women can do. Pelvic floor physiotherapy if you're having bladder issues. Um, so just see this as a very holistic opportunity to
Mhm.
really lean into your wellness in a way that works for you because everybody's journey and path will be unique. And just because something worked for a friend, might have been right for them, it may not be right for you.
Yes, that's so true when it comes to, especially with because I know personally I've tried different therapies and some worked and some did not work as well for me. And now I'm kind of finding a groove where things are feeling good, but it's been a little bit of trial and error to get there. And I think that that is something that's also important to know. It's not like a one-time fix or you figure it out from the beginning. It usually, and then plus our hormones are changing for, part of it. So that's always interesting to try to figure out what's that right formula. And I know some of the women, actually, I did hear from some women that are in menopause that feel like they're forgotten a bit, that all the conversation is going to perimenopause. And, I was wondering as I was reflecting on that, because that was a really just interesting comment. And I thought, I wonder where that's coming from. And I wonder if it's because on social media, so many of the influencers and the people that we're seeing are maybe more of the age where they're experiencing perimenopause. So there's more of that conversation. But it's different too. If you are in menopause, the support that you need will be different at that time.
So true. And I also think some of the conversation is maybe geared toward perimenopause because of the millennials. So,
Yeah.
they're on social media. They're very open and transparent. They want information. They want to talk about their experiences. They are demanding a different level of care and transparency. I like to say that Gen X is my generation. I'm older Gen X, but we will be the last generation to be in the dark about menopause. And we have given the next generation, the millennials, the opportunity to take it even further, and they are. But I think for women in menopause, it's important to know there's a lot of myths, right? There's the myth that, well, you're done. It's over. I'm over. No, you are in menopause for the rest of your life. And for
Yeah.
many women, they can be very surprised that some symptoms can last for a very long time. So for most women, hot flashes stop around 5 to 7 years after reaching menopause. But you've got a good 40 to 60% of women who experience hot flashes into their 60s, some into their 70s and 80s. And, we're now learning a lot more about hot flashes. And this is one of the sad things about trivializing this and not seeing it as a health transition. If you are somebody who has experienced a lot of hot flashes, the research is showing you're at an increased risk for cardiovascular disease. So we should not trivialize menopause symptoms. Also, once you reach menopause, that is where for women, they are at increased risk of cardiovascular disease. They're at increased risk for osteoporosis and for all of those genitourinary issues. So, what does that mean for us? That means we really need to prioritize heart healthy eating, making sure we're doing everything we can for our cardiovascular system. We need to think about our bones, making sure we're getting enough calcium, vitamin D, making sure we're doing all of the kind of weight bearing exercises that might be helpful to us. Hormone therapy is certainly an option for some people that they can consider. And then this genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which I think we need a whole campaign to focus on that because women are very embarrassed to talk about it. And yet, the overwhelming majority of women will experience some form of it, and it gets progressively worse over time. Some of those other symptoms subside. This gets worse over time if you do not treat it. So, as women in menopause, we really need to understand the genitourinary changes that we will be going through, and to know that there are very safe and effective treatments that you can use. You can start them whenever, and you can stay on them forever. And this is because the pH balance in our vagina and our lower bladder changes. So the underlying cellular function of our bodies change, and it will get worse over time if you don't treat it. And
Mm.
moisturizers and lubricants are not treating the changes at a cellular level. This is something else that many, many women don't understand. And I raise that because I've just had conversations with like 3 women over the last month about these genitourinary changes, and they are beside themselves, desperate
Yeah.
for help, and very confused about what to do.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up in the conversation because, as you said, it's not something that we necessarily talk about. You feel kind of embarrassed to talk about it. I've been blessed that I'm in a group of friends where I've had a few friends that have been going through menopause before me and warned me of some things that I'm like, thank you for telling me about this ahead of time because I would not have known. And then again, you think there's something deeply wrong with yourself as opposed to being prepared for it and knowing there are things that I can do to support because it's real. It really does impact the quality of your life.
And, we've normalized a lot of male aging. It's so
Mhm.
interesting. Erectile dysfunction is not something that men are embarrassed by. There was a public service announcement on erectile dysfunction going back to the 1990s. A presidential candidate did a public service announcement on erectile dysfunction. So,
Mhm.
you know, it can be joked about at dinner tables with friends and couples and ha ha ha. But women don't want to talk about this because it's embarrassing and it's very personal, but it's natural and it does happen, and you don't have to suffer in silence with it over years. You can do something. And the whole thing, when we
Right.
start talking about symptoms, it can feel very like, oh my gosh, I could experience this or I could experience that. And I just like to see it as knowledge is power. You
Yes.
may experience very few of the things that we might have talked about on this podcast. But it's like knowing that these are the potential things that may happen and that they're normal. And if they happen to you, that's normal. And um, if it's something that's bothering you, there's many things you can do to treat those things. And by the way, you can also prepare for that earlier on if we understood in our 20s and 30s. And then the bigger piece for me is just I really, really want women to look at menopause and go, I can't wait till I get there because I know, I'm going to be free from periods, from the risk of pregnancy. And I know that I'm going to feel so much more confident. I'm going to be excited about my life and some of the noise that really dominates women's minds around, are they good enough? Are they doing enough? The concern for everybody else's feelings and well beings and the minimization of our own. There's a shift that happens, and many women talk about it, and it's very powerful and it's very exciting. So I just want people to look forward to that moment and to step into it.
Well, what a beautiful reframe on this time of our life. And I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for your advocacy, Janet, because we need women who are willing to be vulnerable. There's a vulnerability about putting yourself out there in this position and opening up the conversation in such a deep and meaningful way. And then on top of that, to really kind of be a leader in this space, which is so needed. And, you mentioned something earlier about it is an industry, and that's the beauty of it now is there's more people, we're more aware of it, we're talking about it, there's more conversation, and with that comes the industry behind it, the potential to make money. And so as women too, it's so easy to get lost in all of that. So your foundation, so if you're listening to this podcast right now, please go to the Menopause Foundation of Canada .ca. There's so many resources there. We're going to link everything as well in the show notes, so that you can have access to the proper resources and maybe, help weed through all of the influx of information that is coming your way. So thank you again, Janet.
Oh, thank
Hmm.
you so much, Renee. I would just love to ask people to subscribe to the Menopause
Okay.
Foundation of Canada because we are going to be launching a national advocacy campaign in 2026 where
Okay.
we need women's voices. We need to demand better care, going to policymakers. And, there is some movement already happening in a positive direction, but menopause had a moment, but it really is a movement because of people like you, Renee, who are talking about it on your podcast. All of the, women across the country who are advocating for themselves and asking for better care. We have this time right now to really make a difference and to truly close this inequity for women in midlife. And it's super exciting. So I'm so grateful to you for having the conversation today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we subscribe on the at the website, on the website. And then is there on social media, is there a better place to follow the Menopause Foundation?
We've got channels on Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter. We're on LinkedIn, so you can find us
Perfect.
there. Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for being here, for continuing to open up that conversation. And I want to remind you, if you're listening, that you are always spiritually wired for love, for abundance, for peace, for optimal health. And I will see you next week. Thank you for listening to Spiritually Wired. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review. It really makes a big difference for the podcast. And if you're ready to dive deeper and join a soul-led community, come be a part of the Spiritually Wired membership. With weekly life lessons and a rich library of recorded classes, it's designed to support you every step of the way on your spiritual journey. We currently have a special offer where you can receive your first month for half the price. You can find a link in the show notes or come check it out at reneewalkerwellness.com. Until next time, remember to take some deep breaths. Remember that you are spiritually wired.